1944. The war was halfway around the world, but in the heart of America, far from Europe's ashes and Asia's fire, a small train moved quietly across the Oklahoma plains. Inside its boxcars were not soldiers, but prisoners, not men, but women, German women, captured, displaced, and sent to the land of their enemy. They had been told America was a cruel place filled with arrogance and vengeance, yet outside the narrow slits of the train, the landscape rolled endless and golden, fields shimmering in summer heat, cattle grazing under boundless skies. For many of these women, the journey had begun in shattered cities, Hamburg, Dresden, Frankfurt, places reduced to whispers by firestorms. Their homes were gone, their families scattered, and now they were being taken to a place that felt like the end of the world. They did not know where they were going, only that they were prisoners of a land they barely understood. To the U.S. Army, they were just numbers in the endless ledger of war. To the towns waiting ahead, they were ghosts from the headlines, living symbols of the enemy. Yet, beyond the fear and the fences, this land was still what it had always been: simple, quiet, and human. The farms of Oklahoma didn't run on politics. They ran on sweat, prayer, and hope. Fathers were gone to Europe, mothers worked the fields, and the harvest was running late. The government saw an opportunity. America needed hands. Germany had plenty to spare. And so, under the Geneva Convention, prisoners of war were shipped inland, not to punishment, but to labor, from Louisiana to Kansas, and here to a small town outside Chickasha, Oklahoma. That summer, the trains brought something new to the American heartland: the faces of the enemy, and with them, an unexpected chance at understanding. For the people of Chickasha, it was a strange sight. German prisoners, some only in their 20s, others gray-haired and quiet, stepping off the train into the same dust that fed their own children. Some locals crossed themselves. Others looked away. A few just stared, wondering what these women had seen and what they had lost. Among the prisoners was one young woman, her name Anna Weiss, 23 years old, a nurse from Bremen. She had seen the skies of her city burn red, and now she stared at a different kind of sky, endless, blue, and merciful. She would later write in her diary, "The air here is kind, even if the people are not. The sky is too big to be cruel." She didn't yet know that the people of this land, the ones she had been taught to fear, would soon teach her something greater than victory or defeat. They would teach her grace. The camp gates closed behind them that evening, but what no one could close was the horizon, wide, patient, waiting. Beneath the Oklahoma sky, the war was far away, but humanity was closer than ever. Morning came early in Oklahoma. The air was warm, the light sharp, already heavy with the promise of work. In the prisoner camp, the women awoke to the clang of metal buckets and shouted roll calls. Another day in a land they did not choose. The U.S. Army ran the camp with order, not cruelty. Each morning, small groups of prisoners were loaded onto flatbed trucks, bound for farms that needed hands: cotton, wheat, corn. The crops didn't care about politics. When the trucks rumbled down the red dirt roads, the women looked out over fields that stretched farther than sight itself. It was a world too big for hate. But when they arrived, the stares began. Teenage farm boys, barely old enough to shave, watched as the prisoners climbed down. They had seen pictures of Nazis in newspapers, fierce and merciless, draped in steel and propaganda. What they saw instead were tired women, thin, dusty human. The first hours were silent. The women worked with heads down, sleeves rolled, hands blistering on tools they'd never used before. Across the rows, the young Americans worked too, slow, methodical, glancing over, unsure whether to speak. One of them, a boy named Thomas, was only 16. His father fought in France. His mother ran the farm. He had never seen an enemy so close before. That afternoon, the heat broke them all. One of the German women fainted in the sun. Before the guards could react, Thomas dropped his tools and ran to her side. He brought water. He didn't ask permission. In that moment, the war paused. No sides, no ranks, just two people under the same burning sky. That night, back in the barracks, Anna, the young nurse from Bremen, wrote about the boy in her notebook. He had dirt on his face, she wrote, and eyes the color of river water. I expected hate. He gave me kindness instead. The guards noticed the change, too. The prisoners began to smile more. The boys began to talk. At first, gestures replaced words. A shared loaf of bread, a mended glove, a clumsy exchange of danke and thank you. Soon the laughter of enemies filled the open fields. A sound no one had expected. It was small, fragile, but it was human. In those moments, far from battlefields, reconciliation wasn't a treaty or a signature. It was the touch of shared exhaustion, the silence after hard work, and the realization that everyone bleeds the same in the sun. By week's end, the people of Chickasha began to see the prisoners differently, not as the enemy, but as mothers, sisters, daughters. And for the women, America became something they didn't expect, not a place of revenge, but of redemption. The fields grew quiet after sundown. The guards walked the perimeter, their boots crunching softly in the dirt. Beyond the barbed wire, fireflies flickered like distant embers. Inside the barracks, the women were allowed one comfort: paper, ink, and the chance to write home. The letters were inspected, censored, and stamped, passed by Army examiner. Still, the women wrote, because the words were all they had left. Anna wrote to her mother in Bremen, "We work in the fields each day. The sun is strong, but the air smells of wheat and freedom. The Americans are not monsters. They are boys, young, polite, and always smiling." That same week, 16-year-old Thomas sat by the barn, writing to his father overseas in France. "We have German women here," he wrote. "They pick cotton and help Ma with the harvest. They look just like folks back home, Pa. Some even laugh when I tell jokes." Neither letter spoke of war, just people, faces, and a strange new peace that lived between the lines. In Chickasha, the postmaster noticed something strange. For every package sent to soldiers overseas, there was now one small envelope going back across the Atlantic, written by German hands. They were the quietest ambassadors of the war, and their message was simple: we are alive. We are treated kindly. The enemy has a heart word spread through the town. Farmers who once muttered about Nazi prisoners began dropping off bread and fruit at the camp fence. One woman, Mrs. Keller, left pies each Sunday, always with a small cross cut in the crust. The guards pretended not to see. Inside the camp, the women began teaching the guards German words: Danke, Guten Morgen, Freund. And the boys, those same farm kids who'd once looked at them with suspicion, taught them how to whistle along to American songs on the radio. It was small talk, but in a world torn apart by division, small talk was rebellion. Anna and Thomas began trading letters through the fence. Not love letters, not yet, but fragments of curiosity. She wrote about her city, the smell of the sea before the bombings. He wrote about the windmills and the way the wheat turned gold before harvest. They both wrote about the sky, endless, forgiving, and shared. Months passed, the seasons changed, and the mail routes between Oklahoma and Europe grew longer. But those letters, those fragile bridges of ink, carried something larger than words. They carried proof that compassion had survived the war. When Anna's mother finally received her daughter's letter in Bremen, she wept, not because of sorrow, but because the stamp said United States of America. For a moment, that name no longer meant bombs or propaganda or fear. It meant mercy. In the heartland of America, words became a quiet resistance to hate. In the ruins of Europe, those same words became hope itself. And somewhere between those two worlds, across oceans and front lines, letters turned enemies into friends, one envelope at a time. They didn't know it yet, but those letters would change everything. When the war finally ended, the women would face a question larger than freedom itself. Could they ever go back home, when home no longer felt like the place they left behind? The war that had swallowed the world was ending. In Europe, bells rang over cities that were half dust, half hope. In the Pacific, soldiers began to whisper the word home. And in the quiet fields of Oklahoma, the news arrived on a radio crackling through static. The guards listened first, then the farmers, then the prisoners. No one cheered, no one wept, just a silence. heavy with meaning. For Anna, the words didn't bring joy, only questions. What was left of home? Who was still alive? And what kind of person would she be now after learning kindness from her enemies? She looked toward the horizon that night, that same boundless sky that had once terrified her, and realized that freedom would not feel the same again. In the following weeks, trains began to roll again. The same trains that had brought them here would now carry them away. Each departure felt like a small funeral. For the women, it was the end of a strange, gentle chapter in captivity. For the Americans, it was the loss of something they couldn't explain. Thomas came to the camp one last time. He brought a letter, folded neatly, and a single pressed flower from his mother's garden. The guards allowed him 5 minutes. They stood on opposite sides of the wire. No words at first, just two faces that had seen the world change around them. "You'll go home now," he said. "Yes," she answered, "but not the same home." He smiled, small, uncertain, then said, "Neither will I." When the trucks came, the prisoners climbed aboard quietly. No chains, no shouting, just soft goodbyes spoken in two languages that had once been enemies. A few locals gathered by the road, hats pressed to their chests. Some waved, some couldn't bring themselves to. Anna's notebook stayed with her. Inside, a final entry read, "In captivity, I found freedom. Among strangers, I found friends. May we all, one day, forgive the fences we build." He closed it for the last time as the train began to move. Back in Chickasha, the fields grew quiet again. The harvest came and went. The boys became men. And for years afterward, people still talked about the summer when the prisoners came, when the world felt small enough for forgiveness. For those who lived it, it was not a story of victory. It was a story of humanity. And humanity, once found, is the hardest thing to say goodbye to. History remembers wars by battles, but hearts remember them by moments like this, by letters shared through fences, by hands that offered water, by eyes that learned mercy. And beneath the Oklahoma sky, the longest goodbye finally came. Not between enemies, but between friends who had once been called enemies. Decades passed. The world turned its pages, and the story of that Oklahoma summer faded from memory. But in the hearts of those who lived it, the echo of that time never left. The camp is gone now. The fences have rusted into the soil. In their place, wheat grows wild again, tall, golden, free. Sometimes, when the wind blows just right, old-timers in Chickasha say they can still hear the faint echo of laughter from the fields, voices of boys and women who bridged two worlds without meaning to. It wasn't written in history books, but it was written in hearts. Thomas never left Oklahoma. He took over the family farm, married, raised children. Yet in his attic he kept a single envelope, yellowed by time. Inside was a letter written in careful German cursive, signed simply, Anna. She had written it after returning home. Her town was gone. Her family, scattered. Yet she ended the letter with hope. "If the sky above Bremen ever looks as wide as yours, I'll know the world has healed a little." Years later, after the war, Anna became a nurse once more, this time for children born in peace. She married, grew old, and told her grandchildren stories of kindness found in captivity. None of them believed her at first. A German prisoner treated well in America. It sounded like fiction. Until she showed them the letter she'd received decades later with an Oklahoma postmark. It was from Thomas. "Dear Anna," it began. "The sky here is still big. The wheat still shines gold. And sometimes when I look at it, I think maybe you're seeing the same one too." They never saw each other again. But their letters continued once a year, each one a reminder that goodness, once planted, can survive any war. In the years that followed, historians would call these exchanges minor details of World War II. But for those who lived them, they were proof that war may divide nations. Yet it cannot erase the simple truth of shared humanity. The Chickasha camp was eventually torn down. Today, only a small plaque stands where the entrance once was. Few stop to read it. But those who do walk away quieter than before. The war ended long ago, but its lessons echo still, in letters, in kindness, in every act of forgiveness we choose to remember. Anna once wrote, "We are all prisoners of something, fear, pride, grief, but it is only love that sets us free." Under the Oklahoma sky, her words became truth. History often tells us who fought, who conquered, who fell. But sometimes it forgets to tell us who forgave. And that, perhaps, is the greatest victory of all.